for joining the observability call. We will go ahead and discuss the charter of the SIG observability. So this is the agenda we have. I just created it so that our discussion is more about finalizing the scope for this special interest group and trying to identify what are the repositories associated with this SIG and how we'll go ahead. I guess folks are going to keep joining in. So request you to sort of let them in as they come. Thanks. Hi, Konda.
Hi, Karthik. Sorry for the late.
No problem. Thanks for joining. Yeah, so this is the agenda. If you have any items that you want to add to this agenda, please go ahead and add this here in this doc. I've shared it on the Google chat, in the Meet chat. And also, please feel free to add yourself as attendees so that we have a record of who's joined and what the participation has been like. Okay, so the first thing that we wanted to discuss is the charter of the SIG. And as part of that run through, we will also see what is the observability story within Litmus today. There has been some progress that we have made over the past few months in adding some kind of monitoring hooks. So we'll just discuss that. And it will also be great if the folks on this call, especially Shantanu and Konda and Safrud and the others, can share what is their perspective around observability. I think as SREs, you are really the domain experts around this. And what you would generally like to see, we can go into the specifics and create issues as we go and as we discuss in the subsequent SIG meetings. But if you have something just to share about what you want from the framework in terms of observability aids, then we can talk about that. I'll briefly introduce the members to the repositories under the SIG's purview. There are 2-3 repositories. There is a drive that is happening within the community to optimize the repositories. We are trying to take a middle path between maintaining a mono repo versus too many repos, which will end up in a repo sprawl, and try and optimize where we want to put stuff. So in that sense, we'll try and talk about what is the best way to maintain observability artifacts and all the code related to observability, what your views are on that. And contributions, I think the group that's gathered today, as well as folks who are outside of the SIG but are generally interested in observability, what are the areas they can contribute in? We need a contribution guide which will spell that out in a clear way. So if there are some views that you have around this, we can always take that. And we'll freeze the SIG meeting cadence. I've put up something here just as a filler. I know that Shantanu is good with this time. We just wanted to know the opinion of the other folks as to whether they are comfortable joining at this time or they're preferring some other time. And what should be the mode of communication? I know some of you are used to having Zoom calls, some of you are okay with Hangouts. So we'll just freeze on that. And if there are any initial action items that we can take in this group today, before the next meet, we can do that. And you could also make your proposal for leading this SIG if you're interested. And we can sort of define the goals of the leadership team, something that's fair on the time taken. We'll keep the expectations practical and see what you could do and what you could define as the goals of the lead. At the same time, try and steer the SIG. All right, so this is what we have with the agenda. And I'll just start off by sharing the observability charter here. Before we start, are there any questions? Is there something that you would like to add to agenda? I see that Uma has joined, Sukrit has joined. Thanks for joining. Are there any comments?
No, Karthik, nothing for now.
All right. So let's get started. So the observability SIG is something that we thought of as one of the earliest groups that we wanted to create. I think right in the second or third community call that we had for Litmus, we had Christopher from Argo AI, and we also had Christine who from NetApp, who basically wanted or ignited that idea to have a dedicated discussion around observability itself from Litmus side. And since then, we've tried to incrementally make progress on the framework, in providing monitoring hooks, increased chaos events, etc. But we could start doing the SIG calls only now. So I think better late than never. So we just got started with that, and observability is really important. And the members of this SIG comprise of folks who are intent on improving the Litmus framework to enable observation and visualization of chaos. And when we say observability, it encompasses a lot of things. As you might know, the metrics is one thing. And when you say metrics, I'm just broadly describing, it could be Prometheus metrics, it could be metrics for CloudWatch. There are a lot of APM tools and frameworks which consume metrics in very specific ways. So one is about metrics, and events, logs, notifications, and alerts. And there are a lot of things that you can do within observability. So folks who are interested in either improving the Litmus framework code to provide the right hooks to be able to achieve these observability goals, or folks who are interested in taking what's already in Litmus and integrating it with all the existing tools. You could be creating Grafana dashboards, or you could be creating some Slack integrations or anything like that. People who are interested in doing those kind of integrations, you're all welcome. So that's one of the core membership, one persona. And the other persona is basically people who are thinking of observability just beyond metrics or events or logs, but they're looking at what they can do in terms of what they can do by utilizing this data. And this is where the analytics comes in. It's something that we have not spelled out explicitly in this charter, but that's also one persona that has developed over time. And that's something that we're also trying to invest in and trying to help. So this is the persona that is trying to use all the information that's available in the form of metrics and alerts, etc., and then generate some useful pattern out of that. And by that, using that, determine what is the resiliency of your application or your infrastructure and try to create a story around it. So that's also something that is a byproduct of observability, or one leg of observability. So I think for all such folks, I think I hope this group is going to do some useful work in making their lives simpler. And the general goals around the SIG is to contribute some requirements and use cases to improve the notion of experiment success or failure and ways to observe that. And we got started with the concept of probes, which we will discuss in more detail in some subsequent discussions. We got this as a result of some community feedback. People who are doing experiments want to know, how they can say, using custom conditions, that their experiment is a success or failure, and what are the different ways they can implement those custom conditions. Some people have the idea of a metric value as a custom check. Some people have the idea of existence of certain Kubernetes resources or its state as the success condition. So all these things are really useful. So being able to add in more observability elements into the experiment execution itself, and using that determine whether the experiment is a success or failure. This is just one of the use cases. This is one of the use cases or requirements. There can be many such things which are tied to observability. So providing those kind of use cases, requirements, and as SREs and as people who are sort of performing various DevOps functions, you might come across these requirements on a day-to-day basis. So bringing that knowledge back into this group and trying to ensure the framework is improving and prioritizing those use cases or requirements, or sort of breaking them down into implementable deliverables, and adding them into releases, the monthly releases. These are all some things that we would do as part of this group. The other thing is the contribution of the code itself to achieve what we just discussed. It could be enhancing Litmus code, or it could be integrating Litmus with reusing some other open source tools. For example, we are using the Heptio event router in order to convert the chaos events into Prometheus metrics. And like I will show you shortly while I talk about the repos, there are also other stacks. For example, the Elasticsearch Fluentd Kibana for logs, Loki Promptail Grafana for the events, and a lot of such popular stacks that people are using today to observe. You could actually maintain those third-party artifacts instrumented to consume Litmus observability hooks. So that is also something that you might do as part of this group. And for example, you could actually create something that's immediately consumable. So this is maintaining the artifacts and providing all the deployments for the stacks that we are mentioning, along with some readmes or user guides to say how you can use this. The other aspect of it is to consume something that's provide something that's readily consumable. For example, there is the Litmus demo folder here in the main Litmus repo, and there is a sample application, and we started with Sock Shop. So there are some dashboards that you can see here, which you can readily use to sort of interleave chaos occurrences or chaos metrics against the Sock Shop metrics. So you are seeing that these are all the Sock Shop microservices which are being tracked in Grafana, and then you have some Grafana annotations over it. These are all representing chaos events. So you can see that there is a spike in the CPU when you inject a CPU chaos. So this is something that's readily consumable by people who are using Sock Shop. Similarly, you might be using some applications like Kafka, Cassandra, or Postgres, or any other popular stateless or stateful applications. And there are standard exporters for such applications and standard dashboards that are available in the Grafana dashboard library, or you might be using in your org and you're open to open sourcing it. So putting them here, instrumenting that with the chaos events to achieve this kind of an interleaving, that's also part of the group. That's also one of the goals. So you could do that as well. The other thing is the chaos observability. There are 2-3 repos, like I mentioned, and we will discuss restructuring of the repos. So for that, trying and maintaining the contribution guides, trying to maintain readmes, and trying to ensure the basic sanity of that repo itself means maintaining the repo standards, adding CI, CD for that repo, how you ensure that every new change that is going into that repo is sane. So some kind of E2E processes around it. Today, the Litmus E2E is focused solely on executing experiments. It does not test any observability aspects. So how to ensure that the E2E within Litmus has an observability angle, or whether there should be a dedicated E2E or a CI setup for observability component itself. So these are some things that also are part of the charter. The well-defined governance and contribution guidelines is just what we just talked about. And the final thing is supporting queries in the community Slack. You can see that the Litmus community, the Litmus Slack channel in Kubernetes workspace, slowly increasing in membership. A lot of folks are joining, asking a lot of questions. Not so much about observability today. There were some good questions and good feedback around probes. But apart from that, around the dashboards or around logs or around eventing, we had some recent requests by Calvin Bui around Slack integrations and things like that. So trying to sort of address those conversations, building upon those requirements and trying to engage with the community around observability items. That's also one of the goals. Non-goals is there was an interesting discussion that's being made in one of the issues. I'll sort of post that in the meeting minutes when I find that it's there in Litmus issues. Is around to what extent we will try influence decision making around weaknesses of an application or infrastructure. Are we going to say your application we have found a weakness, or is it something that we will allow the human to decide, and we are just going to give him the right hooks and aids and the data in the form of chaos results or metrics or dashboards and allow him to make a decision. So at this point, we are going to refrain from doing that, and we're only going to provide the right information. And we are not going to make any decisions around whether an experiment is really successful or no, whether it has found a weakness in the app or no. That's for the user to decide. We are just going to pass information that she can consume. And the idea is to provide as much information to him or her as possible. So that's the charter of the observability SIG. I'd just like to hear from you folks around, do you think this makes sense? Or do you think there is something that should be removed from this scope or added into this scope? I'm just throwing the floor open for questions around this. Or any feedback or opinions you have.
So, hi Karthik, Rahul this side.
Hi Rahul.
Yeah, so the goals that we see here, I think that conclude or summarize everything that we had in mind. So, but just to add a few bits, I think right now we need a little bit more concentration over what items that we are exporting and keeping stuff that can be used for benchmarking, some timeouts or throughput time or those kind of things. I think time would be a crucial guy that we can export through our chaos engine and everything, and then monitor it via Prometheus and Grafana as we go along. I've seen some experiments also by Raj in which we are doing that, so that seems a better way. But and like integrations with other platforms, by which I mean like application aware things. Like if you are doing a Postgres experiment, then we should have some benchmark integrated for Postgres. So that makes a lot of sense, and we have to concentrate over infrastructure, how we are going to build it, so it is not limited by what you want to use with it. So I think you're getting my point, right?
Yeah, I'm just taking these notes. I'm just trying to rephrase your thoughts, Rahul, and just let me know if this is appropriate.
Sure. So benchmarks and these things should be extension to our framework. We can say somewhere around that. So, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be it from my side.
All right. I have called this Yahoo benchmark. There's a good name for it. I just don't seem to be able to recall. For a lot of stateless and stateful apps, they have a good benchmark tool. Just like Locus also is pretty Good. So what you're saying is when people are able to consume these deployments or these dashboards, they should also have the option to run some kind of a benchmark against popular apps. So the demo sock shop, for example, should also consist of a benchmark job which will try to push load into the microservices of the sock shop so that people can get a better idea when they're using it in their
Right.
environment.
Right.
Okay. So,
Sorry.
go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so I'm saying like the metrics that we are exporting now should also be extended a little bit. So, like some common cases such as, uh, let's say the time taken for chaos or the time taken for application service to be back and those kind of things, we should have internally those things. Like we should export all of those. So I think because
Yeah.
that we cannot depend around everything upon external benchmarks and those kind of things. So yeah.
Yeah, this information is actually available to us from as an execution engine. So when the experiments are executed, we are able to get the time deltas for the different operations. I think it's a good one to convert into metric. And I think that would be something that's experiment specific as well. So each experiment can have its own tracked operate time taken. Each experiment can have its own metrics or idea of time taken for operations, and we can add that on a per experiment basis.
Right.
Right. So Suhrud or Konda, anyone, or maybe Shantanu, do you use these benchmark tools against your applications as a practice? Is it something that you're doing in staging setups, or do you do that generally to see how your app is behaving, and then use your dashboards to get that data? How do you? Where does benchmark fit in into your story?
Surut, you want to go it like yeah, Surut, yeah, maybe he can explain better way.
Yeah. So actually, we do use the Locust to do the performance tasks. So we have Locust deployed on a different Kubernetes cluster. So we run the Locust pipeline before this experiment, just to verify the behavior of application during experiment and without the experiment. So yeah, right now we are triggering both of those separately, but yeah, if there is any integration, that would be even better.
Great. And you're using Locus for what all applications? Sorry, is it for Kafka or is it for any other applications?
No, it's for our custom applications. So it sends some payload to our application. Okay, so actually, just to add to this, so we are monitoring the Prometheus metrics during the chaos experiments to see if our SLOs are reached or not. So I think we discussed previously, right? So if there is any capability to run the PromQL also, I think that would be great.
Awesome. Yeah, I am taking that feedback. I saw also that there is an issue that sort of that's created around native Prometheus probes. So that's something that we are working towards. Yes, that's a very useful observability hook. Thanks for bringing that up. I think these are some of the items that we would definitely track as part of the observability SIG. Let me just bring up that issue, and I'm trying to add a label, SIG observability. And there was a label that we created around SIG integration, SIG deployment. SIG observability is not there. I'm going to create this label now. Great. So one of the things we could do, and this brings me to one of the things we can do in the charter, is basically prioritize this for release. Let me add that to the meeting notes. One of the scrub SIG observability issues priorities for release. Something also we could do as part of this. Great. Right. If just moving to the next agenda item. So this is about what our observability story is today. So mostly what we've done is have a chaos exporter. What this is doing is it is converting the chaos results detail verdicts into metrics. Through this, we are able to find out the total number of experiments within the engine. So you can have more than one experiment in an engine. So this is basically telling us what is the total experiments you have in the engine, and also at a cluster level. The exporter also provides a metric, which is a overall cluster level count of experiments, and it also has engine level and cluster level paused experiment, failed experiments, and waiting experiments. So there are some experiments that can be queued if you are doing it sequentially in an engine. So this is basically to say that it is in waiting state. And you could actually use custom PromQL queries, or you could create Grafana queries to get this information at a namespace level, find out all the experiments for engines that are there in that namespace, and coagulate that and show it on the dashboard. So that is one of the things we added. Second thing is we are using the event router of Heptaivo. We are basically using a fork, not the one from Heptaivo repo itself. There is one fork from Containership, which is fixing some of the issues that are there in the upstream. So we are using this to convert cube events, chaos events, into metrics, which a lot of folks here are aware about and are using. And apart from that, we just created a repository called ChaosObservability, which is having some folders around all the observability elements or the parameters like alerts, events, metrics, etc. So Rahul and Raj and a few others have helped us to add the initial set of manifests here. So you can see for metrics, we are basically providing the standard Grafana dashboard to provide these cluster level and engine level metrics. And the logs, we are trying to use Loki Promtail Grafana. Loki is getting more popularity nowadays. So we try to create a stack around that. There's also the EFK, which is pretty popular, which I know that some of the Litmus users are using. So these are all manifests. They're all third-party manifests. When I say third-party, I'm just telling that these are all upstream manifests that are publicly available in the repositories of these projects. And you can use this if at all you're not using anything already. I guess most folks here are having their own stacks. If you can take a look at what is there here and make that better for the other users, you can use your expertise to suggest changes here. That would be great. For events, we have event router Loki and Grafana, event router Prometheus and Grafana, which is what is the dashboard that we are showing. The metric bait is also an option. So these are all basically something that we put out for people to use. So this is something that we can optimize and standardize with more information, or probably identify what is most relevant, what is most easiest, and also create some blogs around it if possible. Any of you are using any of these stacks already, or feel that there is something that you can improve here and convey to the users, and you could create the documentation or blogs around this. So we have the ChaosObservability, which is basically helping people use some known stacks.
Hi Karthik.
Yes, Raj.
So one stack could be like InfluxDB stack. So Prometheus have one project called Influx Exporter. So we can have one Graphite maybe.
Yeah, so you can share that and Probably if you feel this is something that's pretty popular, you can commit the manifests here and create a README which is sort of structured, and also create a blog. This is a little nascent today. We just put things here, but we're not really sure how used these manifests are, or how intuitive these READMEs are. If there's something that you can do to improve this, or you have some feedback around this, that will be very helpful. And yeah, you can keep more stacks coming in. So that's our observability story today. Probes is something that we added. Probes can be thought of as an observability aid, but that's also, it also has other connotations and uses today. But something that we added recently. So that's where we stand as a project, Litmus, in terms of what all we offer for observability. And this is what we are setting out to improve through this SIG. Any questions or feedback around this? Yes, Suma.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a good start. Thank you, folks, for joining. Rahul, Shantanu, Konda, and Sufrit, nice to meet you. I don't think I've met you earlier. See, what will help, in my opinion, is the value of SIG is really external participation, right? The idea is we don't want to drive all the requirements by maintainers. Rather, let's actually bring in the expertise or real-time experience from the people who are actually dealing with this observability. So I believe Shantanu Kondareddy and Suhrud, you're actually working as SREs or dealing with a real application using Kubernetes. So I think it's a good idea in our initial days of charter to hear how, as an SRE, you are monitoring, right? What is it that you monitor? Uh, Prometheus metrics, if you're using, what are the Grafana dashboards that you would use, and how would you use them, right? And what are your daily routines or weekly routines? How will you see if there is a problem? And then we can interleave some thoughts around chaos. Okay, if you're using chaos, what would it make sense to do, right? So, in my opinion, that will help a lot. We can do it 15 minutes or 20 minutes if you guys are interested, or we can take one session each. And then we can even record this conversation and post it out there and seek feedback from the community. This is how we're using. I don't expect that we'll be sharing any confidential information from your side, but in general, as an SRE, how would you actually monitor? That will help us in validating whether upcoming roadmap items are good. Some of the things that are currently in the making or interleave chaos into a lot of Grafana dashboards. So if those Grafana dashboards are not going to be used by either of you, then we're not really making changes to the right Grafana dashboard. So just some thought as an action item or for the future meetings. But what do you guys think? Is that something that's valuable and you think you could share? Suhrud or Shantanu?
Yeah, so I would say actually we are using the event router with the Prometheus and Grafana stack. So as annotations from the event router. So it's already there, I think, in the ChaosObservability repo. So we just got it from there. So yeah, I think that's useful for us. I don't see any concerns, at least right now, around that. Yeah. So we are using those as part of annotations on top of our like existing dashboards for our applications.
Yeah, but how would you actually monitor Kubernetes in general? What is the, are you using node exporter and kube state metrics or some other exporter, and then what are the Grafana dashboards that you usually go to. We find some hundreds of dashboards are there, not specifically recommended by Kubernetes. Um, and we are just going by, you go to grafana.com and dashboards, whichever has the highest downloads, we think that's the most used one. That's one way we are trying to do. But I don't know what dashboard you use. Is it total custom developed, or are you using some well-known dashboard?
Yes, so I'm talking about like the application metrics basically. So yeah, those are our internal dashboards with the custom Prometheus metrics. And for like general infra level, we use like, yeah, as you mentioned, the node exporter and kubestream metrics with the Prometheus operator. And there are some dashboards in the Prometheus operator itself. So we are using those default ones right now.
Okay, maybe those are the ones that we are trying to figure out. So, do we know that, Karthik, what are those default dashboards?
Yeah, so there are some dashboards around these standard ones that we just mentioned. Node exporter, kubestream metrics. There's also a kubelet level, C advisor level dashboards for getting container metrics. I think I also saw that, Sukrut, I think when we were discussing some of the experiments. I think they are good ones, Uma. We can start adding those dashboards in our demo sample applications with Chaos Central Living.
Okay. How about you, Shantanu? Use a similar stack, and any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think yeah, when it comes to dashboards, we mostly have custom dashboards built up as per our use cases, because we have different use cases. So it's not always possible for us to go on the market and just maybe copy the JSON template and then import a dashboard. So we build dashboards for we also use kubestream metrics as well. So as well as we used to use C advisor, but I think we are trying to move away from using C advisor because we face some issues.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Probably other way to do this is, Karthik or Ishan, whatever the work we are doing in the next call, let's actually present. This is how we are interleaving in a regular dashboard, and they can actually give the comment. All right. So thanks, Shantanu and Sukrut. That's helpful.
Yeah, actually, one thing that I think we already discussed with Karthik. So this is one feedback is if we can get the pass or fail result from the chaos engine events, so that I can get them in the Grafana. So that would also be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
This precisely this. Thanks, Sukrut. This is precisely what we are asking for. I would say these contribute requirements and use cases. Like we had discussed, we will be adding the events to chaos results. There are already events in chaos result for summary. We will just be making them for both pass and fail. The event reasons will be explicit for pass fail. This can be done, and it's like already planned as part of our 1.8 scope. So this is great. Like Uma said, it will be great in our calls if we can do some kind of a demonstration. Christine is not here today. She was planning to join, but she had a very good way of or very good ideas around dashboards as well. So if you folks can do some kind of demonstrations, I think as the Litmus team, we will try and come up with, as a maintainer team, we will try and come up with some demonstrations or some work, ongoing work. If there's something that you can show about how you have been using what is there, that would already make a lot of help. That would be great. We could also sort of take some requirements during those demonstrations and further enhance the framework. So thanks, Soma. The other item we wanted to discuss is the repositories. I think during the course of our conversation, we already took a look at that. Observability is one, and we're keeping it separate today. This is something that could probably go in as a folder within. So you could actually have application, and inside the application, you could actually have these respective manifests, or they could be at a same level as you could have inside of the demo. You could have the observability folder with these things, and any application specific thing can go inside the app. That's also one of the considerations. There's also a chaos exporter, which is a repo which comes under the purview of observability. This is the exporter which is getting these metrics, fast, fail, waiting, cluster level, engine level metrics. This is what we have. And the event router is not, we don't have a separate repo or a fork for it. We're just using containerships fork. So it's there inside this folder itself in the event router. Do you guys have any thoughts or feedback or general best practices you want to share around how this should be structured? Do you think it is something that could be in the main Litmus repo itself, considering that this not really code but mostly manifests, something that's usable directly? Do you think it should be there inside the repo itself here somewhere at Litmus, or do you think it needs a dedicated repository? I think how we decide the CI/CD would also influence that, but generally I wanted to hear your thoughts.
I think it should be better if it's in separate repo like ChaosObservability, so that we can easily find it in the project, GitHub project. So instead of finding it in the inside repository, going and searching, if it's a separate repo, I think that might be good. Yeah, at least that's my opinion. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I also think this, and then we can have a separate chart which does all the installation as well for observability components, and then like that would be a better way to manage them. So yeah.
We could also have the best of both worlds with the sub-module approach. Like we can we have a separate repo for it entirely and just add a sub-module to our main GitHub repo. So when they click on that sub-module, they will be taken to that particular repo. Like we were having this conversation recently with Shoman.
Yeah, I think submodules can be a way to go. That seems fair.
Yeah, the only issue with submodules is when there are a lot of contributions, the syncing is probably a little bit of a hassle. And there are some general apprehensions about the usage of submodules. But if the number of changes that are going in are less, submodules are okay, is what I have generally heard. We could probably discuss that further, but I'm also of the opinion that you could have a separate repo. I think what we could do is the exporter is something that's an observability element. So if you're going to maintain a separate repo with artifacts here, we could also push in the exporter here and maintain it within the metrics as a subfolder within metrics, because that would help managing the repos inside the project. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. All right. Great. The next one is around contributions. I think we just spoke about that earlier. You could contribute via requirements. You could contribute via dashboards. You could contribute via improvements to the exporter, or you could contribute via different deployment manifests for the different stacks that are present inside. You could also contribute via code into the Litmus framework for adding the monitoring hooks. Not only the exporter, you could also add some improvements to the probes, etc., to the chaos result. So all this falls under that. So we need a contribution guide that is talking about what all can be contributed and how to do so. Some guidelines around that. Would anyone like to take a shot around this? I think most of the contribution items have been discussed in the charter. It's all here. So, and I'll go ahead and improve this based on some of the notes that we took today. So does anyone want to attempt creation of a contribution guide where they can categorize the different types of contributions that can happen, what they can do to do that, and how they can go about doing that?
I will volunteer for this.
Thanks, Raj. You could reach out on Slack for any help around this if you want.
Sure.
Great. So that contribution guide is expected to go within ChaosObservability. And what could be the CI/CD for this repo? I think exporter already has some CI. Once that comes in here, we could sort of have that for starters. But what else can be done to ensure sanity of the manifests here? We have to have a, like Rahul said, have a Helm chart locally at least within this, which can be deployed from a Helm chart folder, and then see whether things are all getting deployed successfully and they're able to get the Litmus metrics or Litmus events that are able to be seen. Some kind of automation around that would be helpful. I think that we can take up in the next call as we are sort of running out of time. We have 5 minutes. But contribution guide is the first step. We can go into the CI/CD and other governance aspects after that. Meeting cadence, does this time work well for all of you? 8 p.m. on Thursdays, every Thursday, I think, at least until we have some kind of traction going and some kind of standard goals. These goals are there, but as they get frozen and they are broken down into smaller deliverables or areas which we can effectively go and scrub against. Once that is formed, we can have a slightly larger gap between meetings, but for now, I think weekly meetings will be pretty helpful. Are you all okay with weekly meetings at 8 p.m. or do you think we should have a different cadence for this?
I think till we have an overview what we have to do in this repo, or till we have a roadmap of what we are trying to achieve in observability, we can have it weekly. And then how the PRs come, we can decide upon that.
Is the timing okay? So for the Shantanu and Konda and others on the call, is this a good time?
Yeah, it should be fine. Not an issue.
I think this is a good time. We can also like ask in the Litmus Slack for anybody who is absent in this call today and check with them.
Yeah, I'll be posting these meeting notes on the Litmus Slack, so we'll seek the opinion also there. Initial AIs, I think the AI for contribution guide. Thanks, Raj. I'll probably take the. I think Ishan, would you like to take any AI around demonstration for the next call with what we have?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. I can do that.
There's an nifty feature here on the Google Docs, which I think gives some kind of a notification whenever there is an AI sort of added.
You should be careful, Karthik. AI means Ishan will think it's artificial intelligence.
No, no.
It's always thinking about AI. Okay.
Great. I think CI/CD is a good discussion. Ishan's demonstration and going through Raj's contribution doc is a good agenda for the next meeting. Is there anything that folks outside of the My Data group want to present? Maybe Sofrud or Shantanu, would you like to sort of demo something or show your environment or something that you would like to present in the next SIG? Any item?
Before thinking on presenting, I think I would like to discuss this aspect with one of my team member, and then I will get back if it's possible and when it will be possible.
Sure. I think also one. Yeah.
Karthik, maybe probably I think maybe after some time, maybe I will again sync with Saurabh, and we will let you know if like we will see if we can project, if we can deliver any thing. Maybe we can give any demo or something like that.
Sure. Thanks, Konda. I think one of the there's some enhancements happening to the probes. So I think that would also be something that will be interesting to share. We could invite Shubham also into this call. So that's also a good one. That's a for me. I'll take that. This is definitely a requirement. So we will convert this into an issue. So would you be able to create an issue for this? I think we sort of got started, but it would be great to have an issue tracking this so that we can come back.
Yeah, sure, I can create. So just a query. So will it be in chaos results events or chaos engine events? The pass or fail.
We're mostly thinking it as a chaos result event. So I don't have my cluster right now. So the chaos result has an event today to say the summary. Chaos engine is more about what's happening during as part of the chaos steps. It has a lot of events, right from injection, experiment dependency checks, initialization, injection, pre-chaos, post-chaos, summary, and all these things are there. We want to keep it as an indicator of what's happening in the experiment, what all steps, but the result is really the one which is telling the pass-fail. We're treating the resource like that. So we could add event into the chaos result with specific event reasons for pass and fail. I think that can be added as annotation. I think, and thanks, Sukrut, the idea of adding annotations was very good. There is just to make it a little bit clear, we are calling this whatever we are seeing inside the demo, whatever this red bar that we saw in this graph, were also being called annotations in standard terminology, but there's also something called Grafana annotation itself, which is like something that you can either put manually on demand, or you can automate to reappear by putting a query. And so we're planning to use this This is actually a query inside the prom query. It's actually a difference of the values between one event and another event, which is giving us the duration of chaos. But the native Grafana annotation can be a single spike here, which will tell the start and stopped period, start and stopped events and all that. So that was a useful one. And I think that is something that can be used for pass fail, or you could do the representations. I'm leaving that open to the community, and I think you guys will do a much better job around that. But yeah, that was something I learned newly in our previous discussion. So thanks about that. All right, so that's all I think we have. I think we could, once Sokrath creates this issue, I think we'll go ahead and update that. Okay, I'll drop it. Thanks, guys. Chairs, there's a final one. I think we're over by 2 minutes. If anyone wants to sort of lead this SIG, when I say lead, nothing to be intimidated about. It's not going to be taking too much of your time. It's more of a steering role. where you sort of lead the discussions that are happening and prioritize the requirements for each release that happens from the SIG observability SIG side. I think there are a lot of SREs within this group, and I think you're all best placed to sort of steer that roadmap. There are the maintainer team from Litmus will have some representation in Uma, myself, and we can try aiding you. So if someone can nominate themselves or the others as the SIG lead, I think that would be great. So that's something I'm going to keep open, and we can discuss it during the next call. I'm hoping that by next week we have some volunteers for the lead of this SIG. That's all we have. Thanks for joining. I think this was a great first SIG call for observability. A lot of requirements and opinions. I'm just going to format whatever we have taken down as notes, and I'll share it on the channel. And you can always visit the wiki page for SIG observability. It has all the references. So if you have lost the meeting link or the other thing, you can sort of come here. You will find all the information. And I'm going to see how the recording works with the Hangouts and how good it is for uploading it into YouTube. And based on that, we'll take a call whether we can continue with Hangouts or we can do it over Zoom, etc. We'll revisit that again in the next call. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great Friday and the weekend.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Bye everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.